For 25 long years, Resident Evil has both plagued and thrilled the minds of gamers and average citizens alike. Though, however, such an ongoing series is bound to have its ups and downs from time to time. After one of its biggest blunders back in 2012 with Resident Evil 6 and Operation Raccoon City, Capcom decided to wise up and revive the elements from its earlier games from this franchise that made it so great. The magnanimous results of the past 5 or so years were the recent entries of Resident Evil 7 Biohazard and Resident Evil 8 Village, with Village being the topic of today's video. What is up, y'all? Primal here, and I invite you all to come and join me as I rank all of the bosses from Resident Evil Village from worst to best. After successfully reviving its survival horror roots with RE7 back in 2017, Capcom felt that in order to keep its winning streak going, they needed to go back and modernize the elements of one of its best-selling titles, Resident Evil 4. The result is Resident Evil Village, this beautiful new IP on its 25th anniversary. Not only does it perfectly revive the action elements that Resident Evil 4 introduced, but it also succeeds where Resident Evil 6 failed, by tying in all of the other elements of Resident Evil that made it, well, Resident Evil. And of course, when you tie in such action with a genre such as survival horror, you're bound to get some awesome boss fights, which of course are the stars of today's video. I will be ranking them based on several factors from my personal experience, such as how well their design is to me and how much they entertained me. So with that said, let's jump right in. Number 14.
I've been waiting for so long. I'd make a much better daughter than Rose. Please, won't you stay with me forever?
Donna Beneviento and Angie. Donna Beneviento is the most mysterious of the four lords of the village, and the second one you'll encounter. She is also, surprisingly enough, the most human out of all of them, but she's still far from normal. She lives in a big, creepy old house in the Valley of Mist on the farthest reaches of the village. In fact, her house was the part I was looking forward to the most when this game was coming out. And I can definitely say for the most part they delivered with it. It was like Capcom's own version of Silent Hills. So after exploring the bells and everywhere else in this haunted house and doing some puzzles, you finally have a personal meeting with Donna, who wants to play a game of hide and seek with you and her doll Angie. You have to find Angie in 3 different locations of the house before her doll friends come to life and murder you. The fight becomes pretty overly simplistic and easy once you know where to look, especially since all of her locations are fixed and you'll know where to look the second time you go around. But that's one of the main reasons why I have her at the bottom of this list. Well, that and because of how it subverted our expectations very poorly. I mean, it's not even a real fight, to be honest, and there's not really much to it at all. Plus, we hardly get to see or know too much about them. But what we do know, however, it makes for one of the most interesting backstories yet. According to Donna's lore, when she was a little girl, she had a very tough time being around other people due to her slightly disfigured face. So her dad made her Angie, her favorite doll, to help her and keep her company. After both of her parents passing, Donna was left in the care of her family's gardener, until she was adopted by Mother Miranda. Once in her care, Mother Miranda started experimenting on Donna, infecting her with Cato and Mutamycete like the other children who became lords like her. This degraded Donna's mental health even further, to the point where she started experimenting with her newfound powers on other people. She can infect various plants with the Mutamycete, and the pollen they give off can induce hallucinations to those who are unlucky enough to inhale it. She has also infected the dolls she built with her Cato parasite in order to control them and do her bidding. But despite what she's grown into, she's still just a scared little girl with both physical and mental scars. Hence why she wears a mourning garb to hide her face. Though there are still some mysteries about her I'd like answers to. Like, did she really bring Angie to life using the Cato? Or is everyone just tripping high on shrooms? And to be completely honest, I still wish we actually got a real fight like what was shown on the map for Resident Evil 8 in her area.
Killed her. It's over. So, she's gone. We'll make things right.
Number 13. Soldat Jets. Yes, I am fully aware that these guys are treated like regular enemies, but you only encounter them like once in the entire game, so that's why they're on this list. The Soldat Jets are like their common Zwei and Eins brothers. The only big difference is, well, jet mobility. They're equipped with drill arms to mess you up if they get in too close, as well as catto-reactor weak points that they are fully aware of. Of course, the common mechanic with the Soldats remains with them because you have to wait until they attack because they're constantly guarding their weak points. Though that's quite tedious to do here, especially since they can close the gap within seconds and the area you have to run around is very, very narrow. Plus there's 2 of them at once, so double the trouble. Plus it always takes quite a bit to stagger them to prevent them from actually attacking you. It seems the most fair way to fight them is to stress out their nav mesh. Lure them into the tunnel past the gated door. They can immediately climb up the ladder onto the catwalk. That way you're able to safely exploit their openings while taking little to no damage at all. I can say they're definitely the most complex of the Soldat enemies you encounter throughout Heisenberg's factory, something they should definitely get points for. So given the fact that you fight them in a regular hall where you can barely do anything against them, it makes the experience of taking them on somewhat detrimented. What I'm looking for with these guys is something a bit more fair, as well as an interesting mechanic. And aside from the boss fight right before Heisenberg, there's only one other Soldat unit that I can think of that matches those parameters, and that you only encounter once as well, of course. Entry number 12, Soldat Panzer. A bit more in line with the other 2 regular Soldat enemies, Eins and Zwei, but it still has a very interesting mechanic that you have to use in order to defeat it. Its body is fully armored with no exposure to the weak point whatsoever, so you'll have to use some heavy-duty explosives to remove that armor. Once you do that, it's just business as usual. Attack the weak point to defeat them. But I think you can get a little bit more creative with how you defeat it, given how its body is not restricted to only attacking that one weak point. Yes, you encounter it in yet another regular hall area, but there's a lot more room to run around to take it on. The Soldats are indeed one of the most creative monsters in the entire Resident Evil franchise. But given how specifically these 2 are treated like regular enemies, you can't really think much of them afterwards. Number 11. Armored Lichen. The Armored Lichen is, well, you guessed it, an armored version of the basic Lichen enemy. They appear very scarcely throughout the game and take quite a bit of ammunition to bring down. The first and most memorable encounter takes place right in the central district of the village. Their most vulnerable areas are, well, wherever they're not armored. Well, a fat lot of good that does, because they seem to take out the same amount of damage throughout wherever. And you'd think that such a new powerful enemy would quit screwing around instead of just walking towards you menacingly. I mean, I kid you guys not, this guy has the pace of a glacier. But he does flinch quite a bit every time you hit him, especially with more powerful weapons. Plus there's plenty of room to run around, so there's not really much to worry about with him. Just make sure you don't accidentally get yourself cornered and you'll be fine. I'll admit, the Lichens are indeed one of my new favorite enemies throughout the entire franchise. But let me ask you this, developer. Is sacrificing the speed they're known for really worth it? Number 10. The Cannibals. The Cannibals are, well, I don't really know myself, to be honest. Aside from giant Scarface looking dudes with axes, one acts as a major secret boss in Otto's Mill, a place where you get a certain piece of treasure, as well as a whole bunch of animal meat for you to cook with the Duke. The other one you encounter at Claudia Beneviento's gravestone, as a secret mini-boss for her treasure. There really isn't a whole lot to the moveset aside from giant overhead or side swings, but I can definitely tell you that you do not want to take a direct hit from them head on. Fortunately, the places you fight them in are designed for you to easily keep your distance, but they're probably the enemy type that takes the most ammo to take down. Make sure you go in fully stocked with plenty of ammo before taking them on. And have a good plan and be sure to use whatever is in the environment that you can against them. Aside from being a bald, axe-wielding reskin of another boss we'll get to probably next video, I can't really say a whole lot of special stuff about them, to be honest. So I'll just let the rest of this play out for y'all. Number 9. The Varkalak Werewolf. Okay, yes, technically the base Lichen enemies are werewolves, but this is what they become when the mutation fully takes over. Full moon rules don't apply here, no magic involved, just a pathogen. Okay, I'll be honest, these are the kinds of werewolves I was thinking I'd see when this game was first coming out. Yeah, the base Lichens are cool and all, but they're too human in their design and way too intelligent from what I was expecting. When you first encounter these oversized scragamuffins, you're in for quite a treat because they decide to reenact that one scene from The Revenant with you. They're fast, they're agile, they're vicious, and they can go pretty much anywhere that they feel they can. But they're also very fragile, in a sense. If you have powerful enough weaponry, it's very easy to stagger them and take them down with only a few hits. The first couple of encounters with them set you up to get some pretty powerful guns that pack quite a punch to use against them. These would be the grenade launcher and the magnum. If you're fast enough and careful with your navigation, you can easily do the route to get the weapon to use it on them. Otherwise, you can either put up with what you have or get the heck out of Dodge. There's 5 in total throughout the whole game. 2 of them show up as a duo when you play as Chris. But I think the very first encounter and the one with the Alpha in the fields are the most meaningful out of the 5. Or 4. The Alpha Varkalak is much beefier to take down. But it should be a nice cakewalk if you've been stockpiling Magnum ammo up to this point. You get the Wolfsbane. That's the name of the gun, for those who don't know. The other 2, which are the first ones you ever encounter inside Moreau's reservoir, you'll have to rely on what supplies and wits you have. But they should be very manageable regardless, because the first one you can just hide in the house and take pot shots as he tries to get in there and get you, but you really can't. The second one, well, you'll pick up the Magnum before encountering it, so just blast away. And the final 2 that you encounter is Chris, will just unload and they're done. You just keep firing and they won't even get a chance to claw ya. I guess with what remaining time we have, I'll discuss the origins of the Lichens. Of course, they were the normal villagers of the village once, until Mother Miranda created a parasite called Cadeau from the Demites and implanted it in them to control them. Moreau added wolf's blood to the Cadeau, and when they were implanted in the villagers, they became, well, what you see here, until they continued to evolve into different shapes and sizes. And of course, the full adult version is the Varkalak, which is Romanian for werewolf. Number 8. Bella, Cassandra, and Danielle, the daughters of Demites. Okay, that's still not easy to pronounce. Bella, Cassandra, and Danielle are the 3 vampire daughters of Lady Alcina Demites. After death, Lady Demites brought them back to life using a species of fly that spawned from the Cado parasite. After their bodies were devoured, the 3 girls were reborn and reincarnated through them. Though the question still remains whether or not they are Lady Demetres's real daughters, or if they were girls who she reincarnated her daughters through, or if she just decided to adopt them and turn them into vampires. Given the fact that they're no longer real humans and just apparitions of bugs, they're pretty much invulnerable to every single one of your attacks. But they do disperse every time you shoot at them in order to get a clear opening to run. Their one real weakness, however, happens to be the colder temperatures from outside. The bugs they're made of will petrify and die if exposed to anything less than room temperature. When that happens, the daughters become fragile and vulnerable to any form of casual weaponry. You fight them all individually in their own unique boss fights that each play out in their own different way. You first face Bella down in the dungeon, and you learn of the mechanic after accidentally breaking open a window in a cutscene. From there on out, you really don't have to do anything else except shoot her, but you can break open the other window for brownie points. After Bella's demise, Mommy gets really angry, and, well, we'll get to her much later on. But the remaining 2 daughters you can fight in any order you want. I ended up going in the straight order and taking out Cassandra, then Danielle. For Cassandra's fight, you have to use a pipe bomb to blow open a hole in the wall after exposing it from moving a bookshelf. And for Danielle, you have to find the switch to open a skylight. When they are vulnerable, the girls don't really play around. They move much faster and are more aggressive. But Danielle, for some reason, seems to run and hide. I may not have told you all this yet, but by using guard, especially on boss enemies like these, you can easily make it more manageable and make it seem more like an actual struggle and fight, giving a few more points to the action of this game. A lot of people seem to complain about how brief your time in the castle with them is, but if you ask me, the castle itself is one of the more well-developed areas of this game. I mean, each of the unique areas in the village is developed as much as it possibly can be, but this happens to be one of the very few sections where there's a lot more going on than there is anywhere else. It's exactly where the survival horror element of Resident Evil starts to come into play. And if you're a first-time player like I was here in this footage, then you'll be spending plenty of time with Lady Dimitrescu and her daughters as you try and figure out all of this castle and its secrets. Plus, the fights themselves seem to last in fairly good length, since you don't entirely know what you're doing. After entering the castle for the very first time, they are the first people/creature you encounter here. After escaping the quarters of Dimitrescu, they'll find certain times and segments to come after you until you deal with them later on. At least with Cassandra, because she seems to patrol the whole main hall area like her mother. They each have their own unique and interesting personalities as well. The most interesting one happens to be Danielle, who is quite flirty and seems to suffer depression from what I heard about her. Her older sisters Cassandra and Bella, however, happen to be overly hungry for you. And not in a romantic way either. I don't think. Oh, and also my sympathies for the loss of Cassandra's voice actress, who passed away from cancer before the completion and release of this game. Finishing each of their encounters results in you getting a puzzle piece you'll need to escape the castle. There are even unique and hidden cutscenes that involve them depending on what you do. Like that whole conversation between Cassandra and Lady Dimitrescu only happens if you go to finish off Danielle first. And I think there's even one where Lady D freaks out about the loss of all of her daughters should you choose to kill Cassandra first.
No! How much blood and sweat do you think it took to raise those daughters?
Number 7. Salvatore Moreau. Moreau is the third and the least liked of the lords that you'll come across throughout your adventure. Like his brother and sisters, he is a test subject to act as a replacement for Mother Miranda's child. And again, like all the others, he ended up being a total and complete failure, but probably the most out of all of them. The Cado he was given turned him into an uncontrollably mutating fish freak, and his design is based off of Gothic mermen. He lives alone in his reservoir, wanting only to be loved by his mother, with his mother being Miranda, the very person who turned him into what he was. That's just sad, dude. I really pity the poor guy. There are no other monsters in the area except for him, despite what the Duke and the game developers told me. Freaking liars. The notes he leaves behind not only explain his personal dilemma, but also tell us that he's the one who's behind creating all the werewolves and the vampires and whatever. Well, at least he helped partake in their creation. So now down to business with his actual fight. After he attacks you and Chris, he'll start chasing you around the reservoir in his giant fish form. Your goal is to avoid getting eaten by him while you navigate the flooded area to reactivate the windmills to restore power to the control panel so you can drain the water from the reservoir. And believe me folks, this chase sequence happens to be one of the most intimidating and terrifying I've ever experienced. Right behind another we'll get to a little bit later on this list. You never really know where and when he's gonna pop up, and every time he does, I had a heart scare. Once you finally drain the water, you'll finally have enough equal footing to take him on personally. Although I really don't see how this makes him any more vulnerable than how he was in the water. I guess it just slows him down enough for you to actually attack him. Apparently he also has limbs that are developed well enough for him to walk as well as swim in that giant fish form. Well, I guess that's because I also heard that he's based off of that monster from the Host movie. Aside from basic melee and acid vomit, there's not really a whole lot to Moreau. Though there is one thing I think needs to be addressed about him, and that would be his desperation move. He'll climb onto one of the buildings in the vicinity and start spraying acid into the air, causing it to rain down on you, and you have to find cover before it melts your health down. But that's really easier said than done because of how quickly and unexpected it happens, and there aren't really too many areas you can hide under. In terms of a weakness, aim for his humanoid body, but it hardly ever appears and can hardly ever stays out long enough for you to get some clear shots at it. Given how durable he actually is, it's hard to really know if you're actually doing anything to take him down. If you use the explosive barrels in the vicinity, or powerful enough ammo, you can stagger him for some free hits. But even that window's still fairly small. There's also a small after effect from his acid rain attack. The chemical reaction it causes creates those giant frog spawn walls that are easily destroyed and worthless to even put up. But it's still best to destroy them because they can easily cut you off and limit your room to move around. He doesn't really move all that fast, and you can easily stay ahead of him as long as you don't stop too much to shoot at him. Or don't accidentally get yourself cornered in the area. I really gotta say guys, even if Moreau isn't the best Resident Evil boss out there, he's definitely the best aquatic one they've come up with. And that's really saying a lot because there aren't really too many out there aside from Mother Neptune and Brzak or however you pronounce his name, you know, that giant shark monster from Resident Evil 6. But even with how interesting and creative he is in this fight, he's still somewhat of a drag given how tanky he can be. And I still think this and another area would have benefited a little bit more if it lasted just a little bit longer and was more populated. Like, I was really looking forward to fighting Merman in this area. I'm not saying you've done wrong with this place, Capcom, I'm just listing ways that it could, you know, be better, given standards, that is.
I killed him. Hi. Okay, he's gonna blow. Fish out of water, trophy earned. Crystal Moreau.
In death as he was in life. Disgusting.
Number 6. Sturm. From what I was able to figure out, Sturm happens to be this game's version of the chainsaw guy that's been in every Resident Evil game ever since 4. Although I never really saw it due to how outlandishly interesting his design and concept were compared to the norm. Given the fact that the poor bastard doesn't really have a proper head to see out of, all he ever does is charge at you and try to mow you down with that giant propeller of his. And like every other customary charging enemy, his back will be his weak point, given that's where the engine is exposed, of course. After you get lucky enough to shoot him enough times in the back, he'll initiate phase 2, and that's where things start to get real spicy because he starts to overheat and blow fire out his front. And he'll end up doing more damage and charging more often without getting stuck and stopping. This is where I suggest using your more powerful ammo to finish him off here because, believe me, you do not want to be stuck on this phase of the fight for very long. Don't get me wrong, I without a doubt love this character, his fight, his concept and design, everything about him. But one major gripe I have, which is pretty common with a good number of these entries, is the arena design. At first you're stuck in a maze with hardly anywhere to run or get away, and you can even smash through the walls to get ya. But even with those walls gone, it's still a major pain in the butt to dodge him. Though there is an interesting little trick I learned with him by watching other gamers' playthroughs. You can actually guard and deflect him when he charges at you. But I think it has to be like a major gun, like a shotgun or a rifle. Aside from being another one of Heisenberg's experiments that happened to be his biggest failure yet, there's really not a whole lot of lore on him. I did catch on to a few interesting tidbits and ideas I found in the concept art, like how he was supposed to be Heisenberg's father, though I never really understood why that would be the case. Perhaps Heisenberg's father, say, sold him out to Mother Miranda, and that's how Heisenberg ended up the way he was, and he just wanted revenge. Number 5. The Lichen Kings, Urias and Urias Strasser. Hope I said that right. If Sturm was the next iteration of the chainsaw guy that's existed as tradition ever since Resident Evil 4, then Urias and his big brother are the next iteration and reincarnation of the executioner Magini from Resident Evil 5, who happened to be a personal favorite of Paul W.S. Anderson as the Axeman in Resident Evil Afterlife and Retribution. But unlike the Axeman Magini, however, the Lichen Lords have 10 times his strength and dexterity, giving them full control and creativity over their weapons. You meet the first of these two Krampus-looking beefcakes in the village when the horde first attacks you, right at the start of the game. And before I saw any more of the other bosses on this list, he was the one I was looking forward to the most when this game was coming out. According to the lore, Urias happens to be the village chieftain. Like the poor other villagers he was supposed to protect, he was kidnapped and experimented on by Miranda and turned into a giant lichen to command the others. He has an older brother who happens to be Urias Strasser, who happens to be the guardian of the Megamycete. So let's get down to business with the actual fights now. As stated before, you'll first meet the Lichen King when he and his pack come to ambush you in the village when you enter it for the very first time. You can kill him there and now if you have enough powerful weaponry via multiple playthroughs, but it doesn't really change anything, especially for the later encounters. The actual boss fight takes place in the Stronghold, which happens to be the Lichen's den. I'm still a little bit iffy on the arena design here. There are plenty of pillars around should you need to put a wall between you and him, but at the same time it limits movement and may end up with you getting cornered. Plus it can still seem like a pretty intimidating and daunting task given how fast this guy moves. Plus he has a fairly wide variety of attacks he can do with his hammer. He can even drop his hammer, pick up one of the pillars, and throw it at you. Oh, and he can also call for backup from the lesser Lichens as well. Given that he is the Lichen King and all, of course. One other thing he can do is hop between the arena and that little perch he makes his grandiose entrance on. This is something else I find questionable about him. It just seems a little unfair that he has so much of this mobility compared to you, but I do know that he'll land wherever you are in relation to him. So be sure to try and stay quick on your feet, even when he's not doing that. Strasser is a little different, but not by much. For one is his arena. There are no pillars and the area you fight him in is a lot smaller compared to the original Urias. Plus he jumps around a lot more, making him seem a bit more unfair than the last. Plus I think he has one or two new moves with that mace of his compared to his younger brother. Another thing about this fight is that you play as Chris to defeat him during the final assault on the village in Mother Miranda. And it makes total sense given he's the Megamycete's guardian. Another noteworthy thing about him is his different design. He's much darker and a lot more moldy looking. Plus he has an exposed cattoparasite coming out of his back, which I believe to be his proper weak point rather than his newly armored head. In terms of tips I can offer for both fights, try and keep your distance if you can. Use whatever powerful weaponry you have at your disposal. And guarding will definitely be your best friend in both fights. You'd be surprised by how much damage you can tank with that maneuver, especially from a giant hammer or mace. Given how unbalanced these fights can be in regards to the mobility and arena design, I probably would have ranked them a little bit lower, but I've definitely got to give props to Capcom given how creative and entertaining they made these guys. Number 4. The baby. I know it sounds a bit silly, especially coming from me, but believe me when I say that this abhorrent nightmare is the scariest thing Resident Evil has come up with yet. So while you're doing some puzzles down in the basement of the Beneviento house, you get caught up in a psychedelic fever dream thanks to Donna's plants that are scattered around the area. After obtaining the key you need to escape from a well, things start to take a much darker twist as the lights dim, you hear strange noises, and a creature from Silent Hill crosses over into your dimension. Not really in that regard, but surely you see my reference. This giant, bloody, stinky, slimy mutant baby starts chasing you all around the house. And it's supposed to be the twisted image of your own daughter. How disturbing is that? It pops up every time you try to escape back to the elevator. Your only courses of action here are to either run and hide or go where it can't go. On the first trip back to the elevator, you can easily outrun it back through the secret passageway into the room where you did the film puzzle. Or you can hide in the medicine room until it goes away. Or you can lure it around the table in the doll workshop and get around it. The second time it pops up after you get the fuse in the relief area. You definitely have to hide to get away from it. You can either hide under the bed or in the closet in that room. If you hide in the closet, you definitely have to wait until it goes away. If you hide under the bed, however, you can just wait till it circles around to the other side, then get out and run for the door. It will pop up one final time when you activate the elevator. You can either lure it back into the film room and around the table, or you can just wait for the elevator to come. It'll actually give you a window of opportunity for you to fully wait for the elevator and get on. But I think more people would rather take the safe route than wait around and crap their pants. Not necessarily a fight per se, but it is still technically considered a boss and one of the most memorable experiences in this game and any Resident Evil game. I mean, this is what was so well done about the Beneviento house. The atmosphere, the suspense, and the proper reintroduction of the new psychological horror element that's been around in the game since 7. Plus, this is where Capcom succeeded where Konami failed, by fully creating Silent Hills in their own way. Man, I really wish I had the chance to try out PT while it was still around. Plus, this whole encounter goes to show that you really don't have to be a fight at all to be one of the best. Plus, its death scene happens to be one of the most disturbing things I have ever witnessed in my life. I mean, I've been eaten alive before, but for that thing to call me yummy? Ugh. I mean, this section had me so unnerved I had to play with the volume on mute. That's how scared I was, guys. Just imagine if it was one of the demos we got while we were waiting for this game to come out. It really would have scared and confused a lot of players, to be honest. I really don't think this will be leaving anyone's heads anytime soon.
Help yourselves, can you, developers?
Number 3. Mother Miranda. Miranda has got to be the most intriguing Resident Evil antagonist to date ever since Albert and Alex Wesker. You'd be surprised by how much she ties the entire story of Resident Evil together. Her story is that 100 years ago, she lost her daughter Eva to the Spanish flu. Distraught with grief, she wandered into a cave to die. Upon doing so, she discovered the Megamycete and was granted immortality and its universal knowledge, since it absorbed the consciousness of other people. The knowledge she gained from it led her to believe that she could get her daughter back from it. All she had to do was call it back and resurrect her through a new vessel. She's been busy this past 100 years or so, experimenting on the villagers to find the vessel for her daughter, working with Tensu to create Evelyn and hopefully resurrect her daughter through her, and rescuing and mentoring Oswell Lee Spencer, which would give him the inspiration to create Umbrella. She eventually discovered Ethan's daughter, Rose, and believed her to be the perfect vessel for Eva given her unique genetic makeup which was passed down to her by her father when he became something beyond human during the incident at the baker's house 3 years ago. One of Miranda's powers granted to her by the mold is the ability to shapeshift, so she disguised herself as Ethan's wife, Mia, and infiltrated their home hoping to kidnap poor Rosemary, whilst attempting to resurrect her daughter through Rose, which involves a ceremony of breaking up her body into individual pieces and restoring them through the Megamycete. Miranda's plan fails and Rose is able to take away her power using hers, allowing her father to kill her. With the help of Chris, Miranda is severely wounded and Ethan tries to take his daughter back, but Miranda, of course, isn't going down without a fight. So she transforms into a Crypt TV monster and the epic final showdown ensues from there. I've got to say, this fight's got to be the most over-the-top thing Resident Evil has ever come up with. Miranda can easily cut you down with one of her 3-hit combos, so be sure to block accordingly when she starts to wind up. Her other abilities during this fight also consist of using her shapeshifting ability to transform into 2 different variations of her original form, one of which allows her to fly and the other gives her spider-like appendages. And everything else about her is just blown out of proportions for what Resident Evil's meant to be. Like summoning fireballs or spirit bombs. I mean, everything about her has consisted of using the mold, so how do you scientifically explain that, people? I mean, don't get me wrong, this fight happens to be one of Resident Evil's best yet. But the thing about it is, it's treated more like a traditional boss fight from a different game. I mean, it feels more like it belongs in Remnant from the Ashes than it does Resident Evil. Maybe even Borderlands as well. According to a lot of the people I've seen talk about her, they find her quite underwhelming in terms of a final boss. But in regards to my opinion, I find her quite the opposite. She's more overwhelming, and she's definitely the hardest in this game. She's 10 times more tanky than Moreau, and as I stated before, a lot of her attacks can quickly kill you and easily in the fight, and guarding will definitely be a major key to surviving, as well as lots of powerful ammo to move things along and plenty of health items that you can craft or buy. Given how much you need to do, it really feels like this fight drags on for quite a bit. And aside from her form changes and the darkening that she does, there really isn't a whole lot to tell you if you're progressing. There's only one other boss fight from the franchise that falls in line with her concept, and that's Jack Norman as the ultimate Abyss Tyrant from Resident Evil Revelations. I also inadvertently learned from my own experiences and from watching other players that you can easily counter some of her attacks like her fireballs and spirit bombs if you shoot her enough times or take them out with your guns. And instead of using special weaponry to finish her off, you put into this desperation state where you have to keep shooting in order to kill her finally. It seems to be a reoccurring trend with the bosses in this game, especially with the final 3. She ties you down with mold and will try to destroy you with spirit bombs. Once you permanently shoot her down, all you have to do is keep firing until you kill her to survive her final onslaught of attacks. After you destroy her and presumably rescue Rose for good, her consciousness rises up within the Megamycete and will come after you. And you use the explosive that Chris planted to finish you, Miranda, and the mold all off at once, as the ultimate sacrifice to save your family, and your friend. But that all happens in cutscene rather than in-game, sadly. I mean, I really would have loved to have one final in-game sequence of taking down the Megamycete like that. I don't care if it would have been the weakest link of the fight, it still would have been an awesome finishing sequence. Miranda is definitely one of the best boss fights from Resident Evil, and definitely a better final boss than Evelyn from the previous game. But at the same time, she just doesn't seem to fit in a Resident Evil game. But even so, you really can't deny how epic this fight is, or how amazing and intriguing her backstory is enough to tie in everything from the previous Resident Evil games. It's like the big fat red ribbon or bow on top of the gift that Capcom has decided to bless us with for Resident Evil's 25th anniversary. Number 2. Lady Alcina Demites. And that's still not easy for anyone to pronounce. Alcina is the first of Mother Miranda's 4 lords that you'll get to take on. Her castle serves as the very foundation for the franchise's core survival horror elements that were revamped and rooted in Resident Evil 7. She's also the least sympathetic of the lords if you ask me. She's selfish, she's vain, and just pure evil. Like her surrogate brothers and sister, she was experimented on by Mother Miranda using Cato and the Mutamycete as hopes to serve as a vessel for her lost daughter. But Miranda never truly loved her or the other 3 that she adopted. But regardless, Alcina serves her without question, while she lives her life in luxury with her 3 daughters, Bella, Danielle, and Cassandra. Her mutation coincides with her rare and unique blood disease, whereas she must devour the flesh and blood of her victims in order to survive and maintain her powers. The cattle she was administered also gave her extreme regenerative abilities and an increased body size due to them, making her completely immune to conventional weaponry. As you explore the castle, trying to escape while dispatching her daughters, she'll finally catch wind of what's going on, and that will piss her off greatly. The next time you have a face-to-face encounter with her after killing Bella, she adopts a new tradition that's been happening ever since Resident Evil 7 and becomes a stalker-type enemy and will chase you all over the castle. She's not as intimidating as Nemesis, nor is she as scary as Mr. X from the Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 remakes, but she does without a doubt introduce her own unique flavor to the franchise, even though she's more along the lines of what the Bakers had to offer in Resident Evil 7. The only unique and noteworthy thing about her is she is impervious to weapons as stated before, so you can't really stun her or knock her down like you can with the others. So until you get all 4 masks that you need to escape to the tower, you'll have quite a few interesting run-ins with her.
Oh, hi, Mommy. Oh crap, she's back. Well, if I'm not mistaken, there was a door up here that matched her insignia. Fuck. I'm trapped. Okay. I'm fairly certain.
Stupid man thing! You won't live long, even if you run! No place left to run!
When you reach the tower, you'll finally get what you need to take her on personally. A poison dagger that will weaken her enough for you to use your conventional weapons to finish her off. I kinda wish that when you stab her it was more interactable, like when you inject Jack Baker with the serum to finish him off back in Resident Evil 7. That level of interactability would have made this whole sequence so much more satisfying, believe me. Stabbing her also triggers a mutation to where she transforms into a freaking dragon and takes you atop the tower to do battle with her.
The freaking dragon.
The first phase consists of you shooting at her to get her to fly off before she bears down on you and rips you apart. The next is the actual battle itself, while you try to gun her down as she comes after you with great destructive force and intensity. There's plenty of room to run around and keep your distance from her, and she has a great amount of range all over the tower. She can fly off, then reappear and attack quite suddenly, in various ways. When she's just hovering in the air, that's one of your biggest openings to attack. She'll do either of one of 2 different moves. One is where she summons a ginormous swarm of flies to come and eat you. The other is where she'll just fly into you and attack. If you hit her enough times while in the air, she'll land and she'll be stunned for you to get some free hits in on her. You can also hide in the little turrets or enclaves to slow her down, but I wouldn't advise doing so for very long because she can easily destroy them after enough time. One thing that this fight suffers from greatly is her fragility. She doesn't really have a whole lot of health, and she can be staggered quite easily, and the fight itself can end way too quickly depending on how you choose to take her down. But I think she only becomes more of a joke in that regard, given how many times you play through the game and get more powerful weapons and infinite ammo. Final phases of this fight consist of her smashing into the side of the tower and you having to run up and escape her giant swarm of flies. At the very top she'll corner you and you have to finish her off there and then. When you finally finish her off, she'll fall through the tower and try to take you with her. Somehow you miraculously survive while being cushioned by her wing while she just withers away. I really don't know why she would let go of you for that to happen. I think you would have to shoot her enough times for that to happen. Again, I wish there was a little bit more interactivity within her final moments. And a couple other boss sections in the game as well. But hey, I'm not going to complain too much because, let's be honest, she really is an awesome fight. One of Resident Evil's more grandiose while falling within its parameters of what it's all about. She's actually my personal favorite throughout this entire game. The only thing I don't like about her is how much of an easy joke she becomes later on through multiple playthroughs. Or the fact about how the online communities just go after her. I'm sorry people, but big boobs and a big butt are not the only qualities about a woman that make her attractive. You people are sick. Plus, she's a mother, you incestful simps. Ugh, still do not like that word. Plus, if this behavior continues, you're probably going to discomfort her actress or anyone who tries to cosplay her so much to where they'll never want to take up a career again.
I'm okay. I should be okay. She's finally dead. Holy shit. That was some intense. That was holy shit.
And now for number 1. Karl Heisenberg. Heisenberg is the very first of the 4 lords that you'll ever encounter in this game. He's also the very last that you'll get to take on. And he's probably one of the best characters that this franchise has come up with yet. I know I've said this before, maybe twice, but like his brother and sisters, he was kidnapped from the village when he was very young and experimented on by Mother Miranda. But he had a lot more common sense than the others, however, and has been planning to break free from her one day. The Kato he was administered somehow transformed some of his organs into that similar to those of an electric Japanese ray. With those organs, he can generate electromagnetic fields and control metal. Isolated away in his factory, he's been using his newfound power and ingenuity to create a metal army to fight Mother Miranda. According to the lore, Heisenberg is probably the only of the lords that can actually take Miranda head-on. But in order to guarantee an actual win, he needed as much power as he could possibly get. That's when Ethan and his daughter Rose came along. He saw how special they really were, and he knew without a doubt with them fighting by his side, he could easily defeat Mother Miranda and guarantee his freedom. Heisenberg tries to call a truce and form a partnership with Ethan, but Ethan refuses, not wanting his family to be used as weapons. Angered by Ethan spitting in his face, Heisenberg drops him into the bowels of the factory and Ethan must fight his way back up. When freedom is just moments away, Heisenberg returns and transforms into a metal monster and attacks Ethan himself. With Chris's aid, Ethan obtains a makeshift tank that uses materials that Heisenberg cannot control, and is able to fight him on equal footing. Now, on to the main event that everyone's been waiting for. The actual totally epic mech fight. The tank you get comes equipped with two different forms of offense. A basic machine gun, and a cannon you get to do some real damage with. It also comes equipped with a chainsaw tool to guard against his attacks with. Don't let Heisenberg's giant metal body fool you. He's fairly vulnerable pretty much everywhere, but there are some parts of him that you can target for extra damage. Like the glowing reactors all over his body that he shares with his army, and of course the more fleshy bits like his head. They really make a fair amount of good use with Heisenberg's full potential during this fight, especially with his magnetic powers. He'll pick up giant sheets of metal to protect himself with, and then flame them at you if you don't do enough damage in time. After you do enough damage, you'll move on to the next phase where he turns himself into a giant electromagnet and pull you towards him. Break free by using the cannon, but that will just render you without the tank. The real Phase 2 begins right after he makes a hilarious remark towards Chris in Resident Evil 5. And then you'll have to take him out on foot from there on. At this point, he completely outmatches you in terms of strength and speed, so be sure to use whatever powerful weaponry and ammo you have to finish him off quickly. Once you've completely foobarred his entire body, the ending sequence plays when he turns himself into a giant vortex and sucks you and a whole bunch of metal into the air. But Ethan is able to muster up enough strength to get back in the tank and use the cannon on him one last time to finish him off. I chose this fight as my number one spot because it strikes a nice balance between everything that I've talked about on this list so far in terms of boss quality. Even with a special gimmick, it's highly entertaining, and it perfectly balances itself between the gimmick and an actual fight. The only small complaints I have with it are his slow movement speed at times and a lack of interactivity to finish him off at the very end. The rest is just perfection. And even though he goes over the top at times, he still falls within the parameters of what's within a Resident Evil game. Plus his character and charisma are just spot on throughout the entire time you interact with him in the game. Also, a funny story if you don't mind. The whole concept surrounding his minions earned Capcom a letter from the guy who directed Frankenstein's Army complaining that they borrowed too much inspiration from his film for his minions in the game. And with that, guys, my list is finally done. I really hope that y'all enjoyed. This one took quite a bit of time and effort to make, especially this last part. So what did y'all think? Do y'all agree with my list? Who's your favorite boss from this game? Let me know if y'all want to in the comments or wherever. Stay tuned for more awesome projects and content from me, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.